Welcome to Online with Terry Jeffrey. Our guest today is Congressman Roy Blunt, who represents the 7th District of Missouri. He was first elected in 1996. He is now the Republican whip in the United States House of Representatives. Congressman Blunt, thanks for having us.
Terry, good to be with you.
Let me quote for you something that was produced by the Mineral Management Service of the Department of Interior. This is a bureaucracy that actually oversees offshore oil leases. They were ordered by you guys, by the United States Congress a few years ago, to go out and estimate how much technically recoverable but undiscovered oil was sitting on U.S. territory off the shores of the United States. And this is a direct quote from what they reported to the United States Congress in February 2006. Quote, the Minerals Management Service estimated a mean of 85.9 billion barrels of undiscovered recoverable oil in the federal outer continental shelf of the United States, unquote. Now, the Energy Information Administration says that Venezuela has about 80 billion barrels of discovered reserves. So that means, according to our Department of Interior, there's more recoverable undiscovered oil sitting on U.S. territory off our beaches than Venezuela has. If you could wave a wand and create the policy of the United States towards those 85 billion barrels of oil, what would you do?
Well, our policy would be to go after it. We're the only country in the world, Terry, that looks at our natural resources and doesn't see them as an economic asset. We see them as an environmental hazard, and now we're paying the price for that. That 85 billion barrels, I think that's about an 18-year supply of both oil, and then the natural gas number is also about an 18-year supply in the deep water. And we're not talking about anything you and I can see from the shore. We're talking about 25, 50, 150, up to 200 miles out, the area that you economically control. We're the only country in the world that could drill in water for this kind of resource that doesn't go after it. The Scandinavian countries, Great Britain, the European countries all drill in the water. We only drill in the Gulf of Mexico, and all that's done is prove for sure that this is environmentally safe.
Now, have you heard any Democrats in Congress claiming that this study produced by scientists working for the U.S. government in the Department of Interior that says there's this 85 billion barrels of oil out there that we can actually go out and recover with current technology? Have you heard them saying this is untrue, that oil's not there, the Department of Interior is lying?
No, I haven't heard that, and I don't think they even believe that. They just don't want to go get this oil because most of them have a record as long as they've been here of being on the wrong side of this issue. And while they were on the wrong side of it, it was the popular side. You know, the one thing is sort of still undiscovered in this discussion is the answer to the question, well, weren't you guys in control of everything for 6 years? Why didn't you do this then? The Republican House repeatedly sent to the Senate deep water drilling, safe nuclear, refinery sightings, alternative fuels, repeatedly sent those bills to the Senate when they weren't popular to do, when 30% of the people wanted to drill in the deep water as opposed to today's 70%. We were still saying, look, our future is depending on how we look at these natural resources, and we know they're there, and frankly, we ought to be going after them.
What happened when those bills got sent to the Senate?
The Senate, you know, it's easy in the Senate, relatively easy to stop popular things. It turned out to be real easy to stop unpopular things. So whether it was the energy bill of 2001, the energy bill of 2005, the energy legislation we sent over in 2006, or all we did in the 90s, it virtually all got stopped. There was one bill 2 years before I got here that President Clinton vetoed drilling in the ANWR.
And which is a different issue.
Different issue,
right.
Totally different issue than this, just like the oil shale in the Rockies is a totally different issue than this. And then the 2005 energy bill we sent over, but the 3 Republican Congresses where we had a Republican president, we sent major energy bills to the Senate that today would be incredibly popular based on what Americans think we should do
and
today.
they were stopped by a coalition of Democrats plus some liberal Republicans in the Senate who didn't want to see drilling. It wasn't just Democrats in the Senate.
Not just Democrats, but you know, during the 10 years I've been in the House and the majority, 90% of the Republicans always voted every time there was an opportunity for more supply, and 90% of the Democrats always voted for less supply. And those politics of less supply have caught up with us. And certainly there was a we want to be for less supply coalition in the Senate that was able to block almost every energy piece of legislation that the that the Republican House sent to the Senate over and over and over again.
Okay, now focusing for a while longer, there's 85 billion barrels of oil sitting off our shores. The Department of Interior says is there. A lot of this is in the Gulf of Mexico. Some of it's off the coast of California. In fact, some of it is off the coast of some pretty beautiful places in California, Santa Barbara area, for example. Others is up in Alaska. There's some off the Atlantic coast, east coast of the United States. Some of this is off states where drilling is popular, like Texas. Some of it is off states where drilling is not popular, like Florida and California. You're in favor of allowing oil leases to drill anywhere where we can find oil off our shore, or are you saying only in some places?
Yeah, I'm in favor of it anywhere, and particularly when you get beyond line of sight. You know, the beautiful beaches at Santa Barbara aren't going to be impacted by a drilling rig that's 50 miles out in the Pacific Ocean, or 25 miles out in the Pacific Ocean. That's as far as you can see, 25 miles. Texas, we do allow drilling in most of the Gulf. And if you were ever going to test the safety of this system, Rita and Katrina tested it. There are 4,000 rigs in the Gulf, thank goodness, because that's where we get an awful lot of our oil and natural gas from now. And 238 of them were damaged by one of those two hurricanes. And there was no environmental problem created by those 238 damaged platforms. This is a safe technology. It's foolish not to go after this resource while we're looking for how to power the economy a generation from now. It's also important to understand that when Republicans like me talk about drilling, we're also talking about wind and solar and nuclear and alternatives. And I believe that 40 years from now, fossil fuels will not be nearly as important to our economy as they are now. But I also believe that between now and then, we should use those natural resources as an economic asset, not see them as a problem.
Okay, Senator Mel Martinez of Florida, who's a Republican senator, he opposes drilling off the coast of Florida in the Gulf. And of course, Florida is a very key state in American presidential politics. We know from 2000, in fact, who becomes president could pivot on the outcome of Florida. You're willing as a Republican to stake the election on how people in Florida think about you pushing through a bill that would say we're going to drill off the coast?
You know,
of Florida?
the bills that we've been for actually give more of the revenue than we did in the past to state governments and leave an option to state governments. Like the state of Virginia has already voted their legislature to allow coastal drilling off Virginia. My impression is that North and South Carolina and Georgia are also very much inclined to do that. The other states like Florida and even California will come along later. We're going to be using this oil and natural gas for a long time. We don't have to drill everywhere all at once, though frankly the closer you're drilling to the Gulf, that would be Florida, the quicker you get that new oil or natural gas into the current pipeline. Some of this we can have access to in the very short term, others in the longer term, but we're going to still be using these fuels for a long time. So I'm not one of the people that dances around and says, well, the oil in Alaska, we might not get that for 10 years. The truth is, Terry, we're going to still be using oil 10 years from now, and so that's not the worst thing in the world.
So as a congressman, in your view, looking at for the interest of the whole country, you're not willing to allow the people in Florida or the people in California to veto drilling off their shores and allow that oil to go to other parts of America?
You know, if it makes it easier to get the drilling started, I don't have a problem with that. That's why I voted for bills in the past that would give a state option, because we have enough states that would take that option. And we'll go after that oil and natural gas first. I believe these other states, when they realize, well, you know, 90 miles out from Florida, you can't see Cuba. That must mean I also couldn't see an oil well that was 90 miles into the Pacific. So why don't we put a oil or gas well out there?
But to be clear, if you could, you would like to see a bill that says we're going to drill off California and we're going to drill off Florida, even if 51% of the people in those two states say no, because this is federal territory and this is a national interest.
That would be personally where I would be, right.
And as a matter of compromise, a second position would be say,
Right.
okay,
Right.
we'll give those states a veto.
Right.
Let me read you
And
something.
I'd set a barrier so far that if you've got a house on the California coast, if it's 25 miles out, you're never going to be impeded in any way by that new use for the American people of an American resource. The international boundaries are only 13 miles, but you can economically control up to 200 miles or whichever is halfway to the nearest country. That's why we only economically control 45 miles to Cuba because that's halfway. But you control 200 miles out in the Pacific or out in the Atlantic. That's a resource that should be available to the American people for their use.
And how far does state sovereignty extend off the beach?
The national sovereignty is 13 miles. I think that would be the state boundary would probably be included there.
And when we're talking about 75 miles offshore, the state of California and the state of Florida
That's
have no
right.
jurisdiction.
That's right.
That's
They
not
have
their
no
territory.
jurisdiction. They have no jurisdiction.
Let me read you something Senator Obama said the other day when he was speaking in Ohio. He said, quote, "Instead of offering a real plan to lower gas prices, the only energy proposal he's talking about John McCain, he's really promoting is more offshore drilling. This plan won't lower prices today. It won't lower prices during the next administration. The truth is we wouldn't see a drop of oil from this drilling for at least 7 years." Now, do you believe it's true that if you succeed in getting a bill through Congress that says we're going to start offshore drilling leases tomorrow, that will not have an effect on prices for the next 7 years?
No, and I can't find any economist in the oil industry that follows the industry that believes that's true either. Just by the president saying he's going to lift the presidential moratoria on drilling, I think that had an impact on price. Certainly Congress lifting its moratorium would have an impact on price, because a lot of this price is driven by the future. It's driven by how captive people who supply oil to us now think we're going to be to their oil and their natural gas in the future, and we'd send an immediate message that would have impact on price.